Welcome to the In My Opinion show with Ron Barry Robinson and friends. There's no secret that February is the Black History Month in the United States. Most older Black Americans appear to have a preoccupation with Black American history, as it exists in a vacuum, whereas younger Black Americans appear to have little interest or does not get a grasp at all and altogether discount it. Many cultures across the globe are curious about the renewed interest in American history. Many are convinced that others ought to know American history and can benefit by exposure to the Black segment of American history, perhaps because it's so much of the legacy that has made America great. The thesis to which the 2014 Black American History presentation is dedicated will encourage ongoing investigation and discovery that may provide more credibility and value to the composite picture of American history that remains dubious. It is the resolution of this writer that Black American history cannot and must not exist in a vacuum or through the eyes of a single subject matter expert. It is necessary that both points of view be observed, both from the researcher and his critics. This hypothesis predicts that American history is distorted in two ways. First, there are those Black Americans who believe that Black American history is more noble than it really is. And then there are those who believe that Black American history is a platform for secondary citizenship and a role to subserviency. This debate will lead to a conclusion only when enough resolve, enough struggle, and evidence is made to prove this hypothesis wrong or false. To that end, the In My Opinion show continues to invest time and resources necessary to wade through endless research, interviews with multiple references from subject matter experts and reliable written records that bring to you on a unique platform an opinion that approaches the truth and the facts, and certainly will challenge the American people's own common beliefs. Today I have a very prominent local Black American who has written a book and has seen history grow and live. His name is Donald Talbert, historian. Donald, you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yes, I'm a 1977 graduate from the University of Michigan, and my area of expertise was the Black history, Michigan history, and I done my paper on the Black history about the Detroit riots, and I compared the 43 and the 1967 riots. And also I worked at General Motors as a millwright, and I've been there for 45 years. And after I left there, I continued to work with skilled trades people, helping them to understand that we have to give back to the other people coming along, so that we can always have jobs in our community.
Well, thank you, Don. That was a great introduction. We got a lot of material to cover today, so I want to flow through this, and we should have fun, and I hope that the audience will really enjoy our comments today and certainly learn something from them, because I know that you have a lot to offer. You're one of those historians and observers who really have lived a portion of the history. You can, as opposed to history that's gone by, where there were no observers, we don't know exactly when the history is verifiable and credible. But you have lived part of your life in a history-making epoch. For example, you were in Vietnam, right?
Correct.
Here's what I want to ask you to begin with. Why did it take Black Americans so many years to recognize that we had people in past generation, in the past century, that were worthy of being remembered as a part of American history. I can think of Tubman. I can think of Douglas. I can think of Dred Scott, many of those. Why did it take so long for us to come to grips with the idea that we need to recognize these people who had contributed so much?
Well, there was some attempts to do this through the black media, but actually a lot of that got distorted because of the fact that nobody was really keeping track of who was doing great things in our community. And one of the things that I saw was that the UAW, which I was a part of for 45 years, they had a great role in our history, and a lot of people don't realize it. But the civil rights movement and the sit-down strike, they grew together after the union movement got started. And
well, we're going to come back to that.
Okay.
I want to hold that for a while. I want to come back to it. But what should black history teach young black Americans, or the Americans of this generation, about preparing for the future? What should that teach us? We should have learned something that should teach us something and foreshadow or forecast.
Well, what it should teach us, and what we need to learn, is that everything that we're doing right now, most of it has been done in the past through past history, and it only takes somebody a little effort to go back and see what happened during the 50s, 60s, and 70s in our community. You know, how we treated each other, how we got jobs, how we went to school, and that should be a starting point for the future generations. But somehow or another, we don't seem to have gotten past each other not telling, our stories.
Okay, we teach black history in schools today, and it's been my experience that young black Americans, I happened to observe a teacher as she was giving directions to her class, and she had found out that the class had not responded to the instructions, and they were doing Harlem Renaissance. And if you know anything about history, anybody who knows a little bit about history knows that anytime you talk about Harlem, you're basically talking about a black culture, right?
Right.
But she said that many of you students are not following directions and completing tasks. So why is that? Now maybe I've given you the wrong subject, and maybe it's something you're not interested in. So I overheard a comment, and this student said, well, we're just tired of studying in black history. How do you comment to that? What
Well,
analogy?
For one thing, we don't understand, I shouldn't say we, but that a young black man, he doesn't seem to understand that everything that goes on now has already been done before. And anybody who wants to get ahead in life, they need to understand that they need a background, to start with, and something that they can work on in the future. And in order for you to do that, you've got to go back and look at our past history. And one of the places you can go to is the black newspapers, and they'll give you a lot of information on who done what, back in the day. And if you take that information and look at the white newspapers and talk to family, friends, or people in your own community, well, what you'll find out is that there were a lot of people who done a lot of great things in our community.
You know, in my monologue, I pointed out that there are people across the globe who are interested in knowing more about Black American history because it's so much a part of the legacy that made America great. Do you think that Americans can, Black Americans can really live in a world with their history isolated from the rest of the world history?
It's pretty hard because you're putting yourself in a subservient role, and that's the same thing that was going on during slavery. We didn't know who our family was. We didn't know anything about where we came from, and this leads to huge problems because if we want our young people to join society, they have to know about the same things that we're not teaching them, and we need to start with our own neighbors. You know, find out who your neighbors are. You know, find out what have they done. You know, and you can take that, and that's a good starting point, so you can find out exactly what you need to know about your own community.
Black Americans, how, now you wrote a book, right?
Correct.
Now, you had to have some basis approach to facts and information, and that information had to flow in from all sources.
Correct.
What kind of criteria did you use to gather information you need to look at a historical event and write that event the best you can to achieve the kind of accuracy that's necessary to call it history?
Well, the one thing that I used was experiences that I have had from where I worked at. I was privy to be part of the labor movement and the civil rights movement at the same time. So I got a lot of my information and background as to how I should act and the things I should look for and the things that I should accept and things that I shouldn't accept. And all that came from me knowing something about the labor movement, because basically they helped me out when I was trying to figure out, you know, how I was going to act and make sure that I never put myself in a position where I was going to be a second-class citizen.
There are those who believe that American history should be taught every day of the year because we're a part of history. And there are those who think that we're saturating the study of history if you just have one day or 1 week. How do you respond to that? Those two versions of what people think about history.
Well, in the first place, the part that we're not getting is the fact that a lot of things that happen out here in society, like patents and people who have contributed to like the labor movement, all these different things, they all, when you put them all together, you have to realize that you're part of this movement.
Oh, good. Why do Black American actors and authors seem to have a preoccupation with foreign history, African history, and put a lot less effort on American history? Why is that?
Well, one of the things that I can see is that we tend to overlook Black history because a lot of people figure that we're not paying the bills, you know, and so they tend to want to downplay black history and put us on the back burner when actually we should be on the front burner, because black Americans have contributed greatly to this society.
Who wants to put us in the back burner? Who is that?
The media, for one thing, and we have some blacks who feel the same way, because they don't want nobody to see what's going on in our own community, and I never did understand that, but that's one of the things that we're fighting against right now, recognition.
Can you think of looking at the black history in a practical way? Can you think of two movies? One that displays accuracy in how it depicts black Americans in roles in historic events, and one that pits them in a negative role that's not true. Can you think of one incident for both of those instances?
Well, yes, I think the Butler was one of them. They tended to make the blacks seem like they was more worried about what went on in the white community than they did their own community, and I realized that they had to work and survive, but I just thought that movie it didn't really help younger black folks understand our role here in America, because that was a time of slavery, and I thought that they would have been better served if they had showed blacks about the union movement. Now that's a classic case right there that no movies have been made about that, and that's where black folks really shined at.
Well, remember, movies are art forms. All it does is take and create a circumstance at a time that may have been a long time ago. Let's say in this case, for example, my favorite movie is Lincoln. That's one of my favorite movies. And I saw Lincoln, and I was impressed with how realistic that was. When the senator said, "Sir, do you mean that the ends are equal to us?" Mm-hmm. That's what they did. That was the real history issuing forth. And I thought that was a great depiction. For me, that was art. And I love to see art as it ought to be, as it should be in realistic history settings. But they didn't have to sweeten that up for me, because it would have been a disbelievable situation. I saw The Band of Angels, and I think that was about the Civil War, and I think that was Sidney Poitier. That was a realistic one too. And I saw, and I thought Driving Miss Daisy, that was the one that you mentioned. Did you mention Driving Miss Daisy?
No, I mentioned.
The Butler.
Yeah, the Butler.
Yeah, well, those were taken in circumstances when this is how people behaved.
Right.
But even in those circumstances, there is something noble about even slaves. You either decide you like the slave or you don't like the slave. And in certain circumstances, like in Gone with the Wind, did I like the maid of the house? Yes, I did. Mm-hmm. Did I like the lady that she took care of it? Yes. Did I like Red Butler? Yes, I did. I think that was his name. But those are people who I thought that did a great job in just depicting history the way it was, and in a noble way that made African Americans look noble. So, could you give us an idea of where should we go from here? Now that we have Black American, you assume that the playing field is level, okay? And we're moving in, a couple of things going to happen here very quickly. We're going to have a paradigm shift in which there are going to be a redistribution of the population by race and culture. Now, what we've learned, if we assume that this playing field is leveling out, what would you teach the young people in the X and Y generation today? And those are probably those who were born in the 90s and those who were born 10 years later. What would you teach those kids? What would you have them do to prepare themselves for multiculturalism?
Well, one of the
pluralism. I'm sorry, pluralism.
Well, one of the things that I would teach them is like the book that I wrote. You know, I portrayed myself as an individual and not a victim. We shouldn't always portray black people as victims, because what that does is that gives the younger folks inferiority complex, and they deserve to see something other than us being victims. You know, now there have been a few movies out that have portrayed us as something else, but a lot of them they made fun of during the 1970s and 80s when they come out with all these Superfly movies, you know. And I think that if they could have tweaked that to make those folks to be prominent citizens, then that would have been more realistic, you know, in our community, because we didn't want all our kids growing up being Superfly, you know. Yeah,
and I remember that. That was a productive era and didn't lead to the growth in our culture at all.
Right.
That was just buffoonerism. But let me go back to 1941. Let's say it's December 7th, 1941. We are now bombed at Pearl Harbor. And all of a sudden, the war effort pulled a lot of African American men out of their circumstance and put them into the war effort. And then the rest of the family kind of moved away from home, and they went to the north and worked to help the war effort in industrial plants like automobile plants and tank plants and so on and so forth. And now, when they went to work, they were, this is where you talked about the union shop and stuff like that, that started in 1937. Now they began to work side by side by a fellow white.
Right.
The fellow white was earning union wages, right?
Right.
Now, the black person who stood side by side doing the same job, did he get the same pay?
Well, it started out that they didn't, but thanks to people, some of the shop committee from Local 599, and because we had most of the government jobs here, making parts for airplanes and tanks. Thanks to our local and President Roosevelt, he told the General Motors and all these other big plants that was making that had government contracts that they had to pay the blacks the same salary, and that's what
did you research that, or was that written in the union contract? That was written in the union contract. If you had union wages, you signed that you agreed to work for the union. You're guaranteed the same pay, right?
Right.
But these black people at those days got the same pay as whites, right?
Right.
Okay, that means that they moved up into the middle class back in 1941, right?
Right.
Because whites at that time were considered, if you worked for the plants, automobile plants, you were in the top 10% of the highest wage earners in the world.
Right.
Then that was the emergence of the black middle class. Why did it take so long for America to recognize this black middle class? Why didn't history get that right? Wasn't it the responsibility of churches and institutions like Morehouse College and Tuskegee and all of those to release that information so that it would enhance our places in the cultural group here?
Well, the main thing that I saw was that black Americans they didn't have the expertise in those different areas to where they could propel themselves.
Well, even if the blacks didn't have it, the whites were obligated to say that because there was a tremendous cultural change. And that's what makes American history a little dubious, because if we had got a jump start like that early in 1941, we would have crime under control, we would have children under control, we would feel that we had as much vested interest in society as do all other cultures in this society. But that was saved for a long time before we knew about it. And you just, within the past 10 or 20 years, well, here's the Tuskegee Airmen here, we're just learning about the history and their contributions to all that America has become. And Abraham Lincoln was a great catalyst, and Barack Obama is still a great catalyst that makes us better. And what words, in the last word, give me 15 minutes, what would you tell the young people today how to get started for the future with all of these great Americans standing behind us?
Well, one of the things that I would do is I would tell them that you need to go back and look at the history of
okay, thank you. I got to wind up. Thank you. Well, folks, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. We've had a great show, and I hope this meant as much to you as it means for Don and me and for the rest of the In My Opinion family. So thank you very much, and we'll see you next time. Stay focused.